'cause the world is lost in pain, looking for the sunshine through the rain. Lord, help us find a way, 'cause it's too hot bright day. Oh, gotta find a way to escape. Wanna party all night when this goes away. Last night, bring us love, bring us peace, the light through the night. We'll do it together. We'll find a cure on the better, eradicate it forever. Let us all work together. We all have a role we have to play. Yeah, together we can make a better way. Until this virus goes away. They tell us stay 6 feet apart. For all the stuff it breaks my heart. Yeah, Lord, help us find a way. It's too hot bright day. Lead us through the nighttime. Gotta find a way to escape.
What's up, everybody? What's going on? This is Pastor Ray here, and you are at the Well Encounter Live. How amazing it feels to be back with you. I took a month off to sort of recalibrate and refresh, and here we are on a night like tonight, October the 15th, 2020, and I am just excited to be with you. Listen, tonight's topic is Our Voices Matter. Our Voices Matter. And we have an amazing group of folks that will be with you tonight who are all going to be talking about, I know that we're in such a crazy season, right? You've got to be questioning, why should I vote? Who should I vote for? Does my vote even matter? I mean, we got COVID-19. And the world is in disarray with what's happening with the senseless murders of young black folks, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, just to name a few, Ahmaud Arbery. We have COVID-19, we have numbers that are skyrocketing. I think just today we hit 8 million people who are now diagnosed with COVID-19. And we're in the midst of a presidential election. Probably one of the most important presidential elections of our time. And so tonight we really want to wrestle with that conversation and wrestle with that dialogue from a diverse group of people, because we want to hear all backgrounds. So listen, take a moment, like this post, share this post, and feel free to interact. We're one of those few places where you can interact with us in real time, and we will add you. You are a part of this discussion. That's why we hashtag it, The Well Is You. Listen, just a few things about us here at The Well in case you've never watched before. We believe at The Well that you encounter the well, become the well, emerge, and share the well. And we get it from Jesus at the well when he was with the woman at the well, right? So we also say you encounter Jesus, become more like Jesus, emerge and share Jesus. You encounter love, become more like love, emerge and share love. All right, that's what the well is all about. We just want you to become a part of our community, become that community, and then emerge and share that love to other people. We also have what we call the 5 Ps. And our 5 Ps, we believe that everything leads you down the path to these 5 Ps, which is passion, your purpose, your promise, your peace, and your power. Everything we do should lead you down the path of those 5 Ps. And lastly, listen, we are all about the right questions. We want to make sure that we're asking the right questions, because God just isn't found in somebody preaching to you all the time. We believe that truth, power, knowledge, wisdom, God, love, all of that is found by asking yourself the right questions, which move you and motivate you to find your true self and a higher calling to which you've been called. And if the universe and God and love and infinite wisdom works all together, then you can become your higher self. Again, tonight we're talking about Our Voices Matter, and I want to introduce a poet who is a phenomenal poet. I do have a bio here. I'm not going to read the whole bio, but we also like to highlight the artists that are throughout the DMV. Tonight is no different. So I'll share with you a little bit about her. Her name is Miss Cayenne, and we've had Miss Cayenne in person with us, and we've had her on video with us. She is super dope. She's an author, performer, facilitator, coach, and entrepreneur. Miss Cayenne loves all things artsy. She has extensive experience writing, directing, and performing in theatrical productions. Miss Cayenne is currently the administrator for a Facebook group called Poets, Writers, and Creative Scribblers, where she creates a virtual, safe space for creatives to imagine, write, and connect. Miss Cayenne has an amazing background, comes from a background from is someone who you might would have thought would not have made it in life, but overcame all those challenges to make it. And now she does her poetry, she does writing all over the country. As a licensed graduate social worker, Miss Cayenne enjoys melding her profession with her passion by helping others to access levels of personal healing, empowerment, and growth through the power of poetry and creative expression. In her own words, poetry is my friend, my catharsis, my gift to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I introduce to you Miss Cayenne.
Worship, my morning fix. While suited addicts bombard their local Starbucks for their daily dose of liquid crack, I raise my bruised arms to the sky. Bruised from life's injections and heavy burdens. Burdens that took a long time to realize wasn't even mine to bear, because he said his yoke is easy and his burdens are light. So I thrust my bruised arms to the sky, the source of my supply, the origin of my high. Yeah, worship, my morning fix. You see, it's where my day starts. In a small, cozy corner of my heart, weak whispers of praise rolled up into my tongue. Then my supplier lights a fire, and I inhale. My mind is free, and my heart is full. Full of adoration and full of appreciation, and it no longer matters where I've been, but where I am. In his presence. It's the very essence of why I live, move, and have my being. You are the air I breathe. Worship. It's my midday getaway. It's my step away from my desk, lock the bathroom door, eat lunch in my car, vacay. See, I'm like a junkie. I'm hooked on him. I can't get enough of him, and all I want is more of him. And all I want is more of you. See, I'm like a junkie. I'm hooked on him. I can't get enough of him. And all I want is more of you. Worship. It's my midday must-have. His voice is like a healing salve to my troubled soul, a two-way exchange, because as I lift him, he makes me whole. And as I behold him, he changes the mold to be more like him, and I just want to be close to him. Just to be close to you. Just to be close to you. Just to be close to you is my desire. Yeah, 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 yeah. Worship. It's my midnight urge. See, the day is done, yet I need another surge from the Holy One, the Righteous One, my only one. He loves me unconditionally, and I love him uncontrollably. He parted the sea of tears surrounding me, yet in this moment it has nothing to do with me. I said he loves me unconditionally, and I love him uncontrollably. He parted the sea of tears surrounding me, yet in this moment it has nothing to do with me. 'Cause you are sweeter than the honey in the honeycomb. You are greater than the highest mountain man has ever known. You shine brighter than the brightest star in the dark of night. You are God. That's more than enough, more than amazing, better than super, greater than outstanding God is, brighter than the blazing sun, stronger than the raging sea, higher than the visible heavens. God is the joy and the strength of my life. He moves all pain, misery, and strife. He promised to keep me, never to leave me, and he never ever comes short of his word. Worship, my everyday fix.
Woo! Whoa! I mean, Miss Cayenne is simply nothing short of amazing, and I love every time that we have her in. We're now going to join our panel of amazing folks that are now going to have this amazing conversation. So again, like this, comment on this, and share this. Share this in your Facebook groups, your YouTube, text message wise. We're on Periscope, we're on Twitter. Share this with everybody you can, and we're going to now have a great conversation. Let's bring in our panelists. Wow, there they are. Such amazing people. I am so honored that we are joined by crazy amazing people tonight, folks that I have so much respect for, so much admiration for. And I want to just take a moment and allow each one of you to introduce yourselves. So maybe your name, what you do, and maybe where you're representing or who you represent, something like that. And we'll start from my right with Anna Chelsea, go down to Minister LeVar, and over to Pastor Angela, and come back over to me.
All right. Hi, I'm Anna Chelsea. I am an artist, a writer. I'm an equity educator, and yeah, I'm a wife and a parent to 2 little furry hamsters. Oh, we can't hear you.
Uh-oh, LeVar, we can't hear you.
There we go. I muted myself because I didn't want to interrupt Miss Cayenne. I wasn't sure if I was coming in there. She was amazing, by the way.
She was,
But
right?
I am LeVar Jones. Yes, she's dope. I'm LeVar Jones, youth minister and advocate. I love working with and walking alongside young people. Currently serving as the minister of youth and young adults at the New Macedonia Baptist Church in Southeast DC, and Southeast resident, Ward 8 resident, and lover of food. That's me.
Pastor Angela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela. During the day, I work for the federal government. And then in my free time for the past 6.5 years, I've been on staff at the Table Church here in Washington, D.C. And for 5 of those years, I've been a pastor. And all of my time outside of that, I spend hanging out with my 10-year-old pit bull, Rosie.
Well, welcome everybody, and Pastor Angela, we're going to talk about Rosie a little later. I definitely want to make sure we let people know what's happening with that. So you guys, there's a fun, great thing that Pastor Angela is doing that we want to share with you guys in just a little while. Listen, we're going to dive into our conversation. You all know, I mean, even tonight, there are things happening that go around this election. And I don't know about y'all, but I definitely can feel the tension in the air. I mean, not just from the election, but just from the entire year of 2020. Everybody kind of was like, let's get out of 2019, let's move forward. And then we got to 2020, and bam, it was like...
We regretted it.
I don't even... Yeah, ridiculous. It was totally ridiculous. Right. And so... as we're approaching the season of voting, it was so important for me to have a panel of diverse voices to kind of talk about, should we even vote? Should we care? Why should we care? What's the purpose in voting? What are you thinking about as you consider voting? So I want to jump right in. You individually, do you think it is important to vote, especially as an American citizen? And why? I see, but Anna Chelsea, we'll go with you first.
Um, so I don't know everyone else's situation. I think it's crucial. An ability could be defined in a lot of different ways. I think it's crucial to exercise that ability. I don't. I'm not a U.S. citizen, so I don't have the ability to vote in any election, and in this election in particular, which is, and I know we're going to get into this, I think of particular importance. I don't have the ability to participate in it, but I do think it's really important that people do. And I say, if you have the ability, it's not just about whether or not you're a citizen, but I think people have, um, there's access, class issues, racial issues, there's capacity issues that all impact whether or not a person really can get to the polls and be a part of the voting process. I can't be a part of that, but I can be a part of the conversation and hopefully can influence it by doing things like participating in this evening.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Minister LeVar?
Yeah, hands down. Yes, 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 across the board. It is not just an opportunity; it is a responsibility for those of us who have it to exercise it. And I think I appreciate Annie Elsie's your perspective and the lens that you're looking at this in, because it helps me also understand all of us have a role to play. And I tell this especially to my young people who are not of age yet to vote, who sometimes feel they don't have a place in this process, in this conversation, in this moment. You very much do, because this is about being an influencer and making sure that as many people as possible engage in the process, engage in the dialogue. COVID and this political season and the pandemic of systemic racism, all of that has prompted conversations just like the one that we're having tonight all across the world. And so there are no requirements for you to engage in a conversation that causes people to critically think about why we do what we do, why we should change maybe some of the things that we do. So everybody has a place. And if you have the ability to vote, you have the responsibility to vote.
Yeah, yeah, that's deep because it is a privilege. And we're going to talk about that. I want to let Pastor Angela just get in on this one, and then we'll double back to some of that.
Sure, I echo all of those thoughts as well. Um, I think just when you look at the world, the idea that places like Saudi Arabia just allowed women to vote, I think in 2015. Parts of Switzerland didn't even allow women to vote until the 1980s. It's just this insane ability to be able to influence the country in which you live if you are able to. Obviously, there's the policy that says you can, and then there's the practicality of whether or not it's possible based off of other issues, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But if we have the ability to have these conversations, I think it is a giant responsibility to move forward then and actually vote.
Yeah, yeah. It is a privilege, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna jump through these questions a little bit, but Anna Chelsea, I think people are going to wonder, and if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to ask you to maybe share why you're not able to vote.
Sure. So I was born in Venezuela. I'm a permanent resident of the United States. I'm. It means I'm an immigrant, but I'm documented, so I have some protections and access to some rights and privileges in the U.S. But one of the ones that I do not have access to is voting. Um, I do have access to a lot of your responsibilities, like paying my taxes and following all of the same laws, and being under the same impact, many of them really, really harmful and scary, of the current administration. All of that I am experiencing the same weight and impact of, but I can't have any say in the voting process because I was born in Venezuela. So as a permanent resident, you don't have that right. So that's why.
Let me stay there though. Like how does that make you feel, right? Like I'm just curious. You can't, and you are paying taxes. You are doing these other things. How do you feel about that?
Sure. Well, just to be clear, a lot of immigrants, documented and undocumented, are paying taxes. That's all. I
Sure.
realize we could have like a whole other panel
Yeah.
conversation about the
Yeah.
misunderstandings folks seem to have about that. A lot of immigrants, regardless of whether they're documented or not, are paying taxes. But in terms of like filing taxes at the end of the year and paying like income tax, I do that as well. um, so it really pisses me off, to be quite blunt. It's incredibly frustrating. And it's really, really frustrating as I watch my people, as I watch other, particularly Black and Brown immigrants, the way they're treated, the way, and this is not just under this administration. This was under Obama administration, like all 8 years under Obama. This was in previous administration. So let's not pretend this is a new issue. It is reached new terrifying levels, absolutely, that need to be stopped. But this is not a new issue. But yeah, having no ability to impact it, at least as far as within the voting booth, it's really, really frustrating because it definitely impacts me
Yeah.
and people I care
Anna,
about.
can I ask one follow-up question?
Sure.
What do you say to people who then see you as a permanent resident and then they're like, why don't you just become a citizen?
Yeah.
Mm.
um,
Hmm.
First of all, one of the stories I always tell people when they're like, why don't you just become a citizen, is in one of my many, many trips to immigration and customs offices for one of the many, many things I've paid thousands of dollars for. I met a woman named Carmen, and she was really, really excited, as a little elderly woman. And she was very excited because after 20 years of waiting, her husband was receiving his citizenship. 20
Yep.
years before he had applied, and just sat and waited. Some people do that and they receive it in a year. And it truly is luck of the drawer. Your folder landed on the right desk. That person had the time, the energy, the wherewithal, whatever, to give you the attention you needed. You had the right connections. You had the right person willing to sponsor you. You had the right amount of money, um, and the right luck, and your process might be smooth, or your process might be like Carmen and her husband's. So there's that. It's not the simple process people think it is. Bureaucracy and the money that it goes into this, like, it is not in the government's best interest to make citizens of immigrants. It's not. They lose a lot of money. That's a whole other conversation. I've put thousands into just keeping my document, not maintaining my status, because once you have your permanent residency, it is yours for life. Maintaining documentation of my status has cost thousands of dollars over the years. Just proof that I have it. Um, as I've gotten older, though, the idea that I need to have citizenship for anything other outside of voting, and maybe this is the if you're an Enneagram person, the Enneagram 8 in me that is like angered by the idea that like that my identity, my value as a human being and as a person in this country is determined by that one extra step. It honestly really, really angers me.
Mm.
I've been here since I was 3 years old.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
When you, yeah, thank you, Angela, for asking that question. When you mentioned the fact that it costs so much for you to even remain in the status you are, and you talk about the benefit that the country has, it almost reminds me of the prescription drug situation that we have, right? Like, we talk so much about the fact that the government benefits off of all of the drugs that we put out there for people to get better. So it's almost like, well, if people got better, we lose a lot of money.
What are you
The
gonna do?
sad part is, yeah,
Oh,
right. But
so
this
much.
is, but the sad part is, we're absolutely willing to play with people's lives for the dollar. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that just sort of angers me.
I mean, I would add to that too, real quick, Amon. You know, it puts me in the mind. When we talk about that type of disenfranchisement, it puts me in the mind of this wonderful place that I live in, where 770,000 people are also, you know, in a similar position, who pay more taxes per capita than most states, but have
Mm.
no voice in the people's house. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of the District of Columbia, and you know, all of the politics and money that goes into that conversation, again, just underscores so many other issues that are other subtopics of what we're talking about tonight. But that just again show us why we need to stay engaged in this process, not only
Yes.
during election season, but we need to be engaged year round. So
Yes. For sure.
Lauren, who's a good friend of the show, of the Encounter, she says the Trump administration tried to restrict rights from Puerto Ricans as citizens, even though we pay majority of federal taxes as a territory. The goal is to have us under the same deportation and ICE center laws that he's
Hmm.
currently enforcing. It's disgusting.
Yep.
Um,
yeah,
Also, the fact
Lavar,
that Puerto Ricans can't even vote for the president is disgusting.
yeah, no, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. Um, Speaking of not voting, so there was a time in this country when black and brown votes just did not matter at all,
Yep.
um, before 1965. And so, LeVar, I want to turn to you, in terms of, does that play a role? Do you think that our past, our history plays a role in why, we as black and brown people should be voting, currently?
Yeah, I heard something powerful. Someone said, we constantly hear the argument of, someone in order for you to have the right to vote.
Mm,
And I think that is a powerful statement. It is a deep reminder of the commitment and the legacy that we as Black people come from. A
Mm,
deep reminder of um, all that our ancestors did to ensure that we would have access to this right. But the person said, we're often talking about the fact that somebody died to give us this right, but there's a flip, and that you should live to exercise this right. That it's not just that we focus on the past, but that we also look at our role in playing, setting the stage for the next generations that are to come. So it's crucial that there was a Rosa Parks. It's crucial that there was a Dr. King. It's crucial that there was a SNCC and an SCLC and Montgomery Improvement Association. And it's essential that as a part of our story, which is also an American story, that those things took place. But we also need to awaken in people, particularly African American people, the fact that there is life in front of us because of what is behind us, but there's life in front of us, and that life needs our vote. That life requires action for us, not only for the lives that we want to live now, but for the life and legacy we want to leave for those generations that are coming in front of us. All of it connects, and it's important that we connect those dots. And it's a struggle for a lot of us because, again, so much of our history and our culture is in bits and pieces all over the globe. But in this, we can be sure that there was a people who fought for this right that we have now. And if we are not careful, if we're not careful, our children coming in front of us may not see a Voting Rights Act, may not see the liberties that our ancestors died for, to give us now. So we got to make sure that we connect the dots and do our part as well.
yeah. Angela, you have a different lens, right? I mean, you come from, you're white, you're a white woman, and you in this system, you hear, some of these experiences, but not totally feel all of them. Even though, right, even as a woman, you are to some extent, you have had a fight as well. But when you hear these things, what emotion does this, move about in you? How are you affected by hearing these stories of black and brown people, and and do you take that to the voting polls as well when you consider who you're voting for?
for sure. I mean, I think when I hear those stories, and I appreciate you saying that I'm also a woman and I've had my own issues, but that's nothing in comparison, and my own life does not speak that. So I don't want to give off that impression. But when I hear these stories, I hear a lot of responsibility, and I also take on a lot of shame. Just thinking even to 2016, I think something like 94% of Black women voted for Hillary Clinton, and 54% of white women voted for Donald Trump. And so it is
Mm,
something that weighs on me a lot, knowing how much Black
mm,
women tried to carry us somewhere else, and
mm.
consistently, even in local elections. So just the responsibility to try to follow that lead.
Yeah.
Mm.
Lauren again says we don't need to vote for the president. We need to vote for Congress. We need to get minorities and modern mentalities into Congress. Every presidential law being passed has to go through Congress first. And she's right when you think about the fact that we're not just voting for the president. Um, do you think, Anna Chelsea, do you think that our voices are heard? And do you think people take the other elections just as seriously as they do the presidential election?
Oh no, absolutely not. Um, um, I don't um, no, I local and state elections are not taken as, I don't know if I don't want to be say seriously. Um, the turnout is just not as high. I don't think the attention span, the capacity to all year long to be able to participate. Um, I don't know that people have that ability, that we make it possible for them, that we're eliminating the barriers that are necessarily need to be eliminated so that they're able to participate in the way that we need them to participate. Um, so I don't want to say that they just don't care or they're apathetic. I think that's a really easy way to dismiss people's lack of participation in something. So my first question would be, well, what are the barriers that prevent people from participating? Um, but yes, I think participation in state and local is far less than it is in um, presidential elections. Um, I think the second part was, do they matter? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
absolutely, I mean,
yeah,
they
yeah,
absolutely matter.
yeah.
They matter, if not more, at least equally to presidential elections. Outside of a few, Trump included, where you just kind of like, where did this person come from?
Yeah.
You can prevent far earlier, like these people rising in the ranks and amassing the amount of power they have long before they're ever on a ballot to be president. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but you have to make it possible for people to participate in a way that works in their lifestyle.
Yeah, I was watching the news and I saw this great thing that's happening. And I miss where, but there are these there's this woman and this man, both African American, and they are putting up murals on in these booths. And when you see the mural, it invokes you to vote, and it talks about, like, it has these murals of like people and why you should vote. And then once you go in the booth and you are gazing at these murals. It has a phone that you can actually call to make sure you're registered to vote, or if you want to register to vote. So I guess it invokes this kind of emotional response, and I think it's so dope. They're doing some amazing work. LeVar, you work with young people. Um, do you think that this generation, this younger generation, do you think they are educated on all the things we're voting about? Do you think they care as much about this stuff? And let me say this too. It's so interesting. I was talking to somebody who's a little younger, and I was saying, like, yeah, I was watching CNN and I also watch Fox to kind of make sure I'm balanced in what I'm hearing. And he was like, yeah, man, I mean, but, we don't listen to any of that stuff. We catch all our social media. We catch all our news on social media. We catch all our news in, like, different other platforms. I mean, do you think the younger generation, from what you're experiencing in your youth ministries, are they engaged? Do they care? Are they just frustrated? Like, what seems to be the general consensus around what you're dealing with?
So let me real quick before I answer that, tag the end of your
Anna Chelsea?
previous question, and it does matter, and one only needs to look to Kentucky to answer the question, if
Mm,
state and local elections matter, because right now the reason that there are no uh, police officers dutifully arrested for the murder of Breonna Taylor is
mm,
because of the elected attorney general for the state of Kentucky. And so that in and of itself, I think, answers the question of whether or not it matters. And us understanding the weight of even, the presidential election. It's not just electing a president. this current president has appointed and nominated, and the Senate has confirmed almost 300 federal judges who are answering court cases all across this country with a particular mindset. And
Yes.
so all of it matters. All of it matters. I
Yes.
think our young
Absolutely.
people I think our young people are engaged. I know that they are engaged. Are they engaged to the level that we would like to see? No, but I think we all got to own why they are not engaged to that level. Our school systems have to own it. Our churches have to own it. Parents, homes, we all have to own why our kids are not engaged as much. When was the last time you, as a parent, had a conversation with your child, with your family, about what's going on in politics? When was the last time you turned the radio off in the car? When was the last time you gave like my mom used to give me assignments to,
Mm.
not school, my mom gave me assignments to come back and have an understanding. So I think that there are countless young people who are alert, awake, engaged in these processes. More, we do need more, and I think that social media definitely has played a part in their engagement. And there are so many ways in which social media is being used in a positive way to get young people engaged. It's insane. Like I love it. I love the energy that young activists around the country are engaging with and reaching out to young people. I think of the work of national organizations like the NAACP, whose Youth and College Division does a great job in terms of engaging with young people and getting them to see. But there's also mentoring programs and churches who are getting their young people engaged in these conversations. Yesterday, for our team Bible study, which we do on Instagram, I actually did it live, standing in front of the Supreme Court. And we talked about, from a young believer's perspective, why all of this matters. And
Mm.
I want to just read this. I'll end with this scripture in Jeremiah 29:7 that says, "But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf." This is the dope part about the end of it. For in its welfare you will find your welfare. And the conversation
Mm.
that we have with our teams about that, when our communities do well, we do well. And
Mm.
so the church has to understand it is still our role. In the civil rights movement, it was the church and the black community that was at the center of every action that took place. 300 black youth in Birmingham gathered at the 16th Street Baptist Church before they marched in the streets, leading protests that led to sustainable change. And so our young people are awake. And if they're not, then we got to own them, create spaces to be engaged in this process.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Um, you know, Pastor Angela, being one of the pastors at the Table Church, which is multi ethnic, multicultural, has people from all different backgrounds, do you believe that faith should play a part in how you elect, how you vote and how you vote, who you vote for?
So just before I answer that, LeVar, that scripture is the founding scripture of the Table Church.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That
Oh,
was
that's
a great
cool.
transition, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Saying that.
Nice.
So it's interesting when people look at, we kind of, I don't, Ramon, obviously we're in the series just talking about Jesus and how, you know, he's not necessarily the guy holding the lamb that everyone wants him to be all the time.
Mm,
And there's so many sides to him, just like he was both, God and human. And so he was all of these things. And he was very political. Just
Mm.
because he didn't run for office doesn't mean that he wasn't political. And I think Christians need to be more comfortable with that, because
Mm.
to there's so many people, and I will say, just white people I know who just don't watch the news anymore or don't want to be a part of it or want to just step away. It's like that's a privilege that you just get to step away. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no one else around you can do that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think Christians need to be involved for the sake of exactly what that scripture just said. Where you're planted is where you're supposed to be, helping and healing and bringing the kingdom of God to that
Yep.
place. And that looks like feeding the homeless, and that, for whatever sinful reason, is political.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
Wow.
yeah. I think it's so interesting. We're going to talk next week a lot about that too. Was Jesus political? And we're gonna have a really crazy conversation next week that I'm really looking forward to, as well. Um, Everybody has come of a certain age, right? Like you were once a child. You're now, all of us are healthy
Watch
adults.
it.
Not to put any. Listen, I said healthy adults.
We're very young.
Healthy adults.
Okay.
Still in our 30s.
um,
Still in our 30s.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, see, I'm 20 plus something. That's all you need to know right there. LeVar, you've known me the longest time, which is only 10 years, right?
Yep. All 40
Listen.
years. All 40 years. Yep. Mm-hmm.
um, Listen, how have you? Do you think that as you've gotten older and more mature, that your thoughts on on voting have changed? Who you would vote for, how you would vote, even do you differ from your family? Are there conversations you're having with your own family right now? Like all of that stuff. Like just kind of tell us about what that looks like for you in this season.
Mm.
I don't want to say that mine has not changed. It has matured, for sure. I will say,
Mm.
the one thing, this idea and this notion that the black experience is monolithic and that all black people think the same, and so we all vote the same. All brown people think the same, and we vote the same. All white people vote. All evangelicals think the same. And vote. We can't exist in a land where we pigeonhole people that way, because it defeats the purpose of a free society where we are free to think as we choose. And so, if I make a decision to follow a more liberal perspective, it should not just be because black people have always traditionally voted Democrat. It should be because I have taken the time to really consider the issues, and as Angela was saying, through the lens of my faith. And of course, I'm going to look at it through that lens as my faith matures, as my understanding of purpose and calling matures. And I think, too, just as I get older, my patience for, um, I wanted to say it in a nicer way, my patience for crap, my patience for crap runs thinner. And so this whole notion of political theater at the detriment of people, we talked about, these warring town halls taking place tonight. It's insanity. And it's not even just a thing of hitting or targeting one particular person. In this instance, all of y'all are crazy. Because while you're having this, this temper tantrum and political fight, their families and they're real people with real issues stuck in the middle of all of this. And I thought about that even yesterday when I was standing, in front of the Supreme Court, and I turned and looked at the Capitol, and I just thought, I think to your point earlier, Ramon, you know, representation is a huge part of why people do not engage in the process. And I thought about the fact that when you think about the people that are under that dome in the U.S. Capitol, there are lots of old white men. And I know cool, like mad cool old white men. Father Tom Composto was my former boss in Baltimore. Great guy. But my question is, why are we consistently led by old white men in this country when there are phenomenal women of whatever color? There are phenomenal LGBTQ of whatever color. There are phenomenal people who make up more of the beloved community that Dr. King talked about. Where is the space for those folks to step in and be a voice for the people that they represent.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. Either one of you follow up.
That was good.
And Jesse,
Yeah.
go for it.
No, I mean, I don't mean to jump us back to what was being said before, but my mind is still sitting with us like two questions ago. Are we allowed to jump
Yeah,
back? Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, because I'm thinking on the question, as Mr. LeVar was talking about the youth that he works with and how engaged they are, and you're asking the question about like where they're getting their information from, and are they like, are they aware and participating? Um, and Pastor Angela, you brought up the way in which white women participated in the last election, and I just think about these things, and I'm kind of frustrated because we spend so much time on these conversations about like how are how are youth participating and how are folks of color participating, when the reality is the people who have been deciding for better or worse, um, have, like, as you just said, Angela, have been white people. And so I like, where are our conversations about where are they getting their information from? Is that information sound information? Are they being well educated? Are they like, so I think we're making like these strawman arguments out of like sort of demonizing is too strong a word, but vilifying like apathy or ignorance of youth or of folks of color, but and we're picking the folks who have the least amount of power in the game. Like, and so I don't really understand why we spend so much time asking questions about them. They have the least amount of power in this conversation. Um,
That's good.
White men, white women are the ones who decided the last election, are probably going to decide this one, if we're being frank. I love that folks that like the turnout has been incredible. The folks who are standing in line posting photos and being like, I've been out here for 12 hours. There are people who are making meals and making sure that folks are who are in line, like, are getting fed because it's an all day event. But that shouldn't, like, yes, it's inspirational, but it shouldn't be inspirational. It's heartbreaking. That shows you how disenfranchised they are, how frankly effed up the system is. So to me, like, clearly they're doing all they can. It's not on them to be fixing this. So I just that was what was running through my mind when you all were having that part of the conversation, and I've kind of been stuck there for the last like 5 minutes.
That's good. That's
Uh,
good.
no,
Yeah.
that's good. I appreciate it. I think like the whole point for me of the well is to be real, to be just to be authentic. I think so many times the church gets a bad rep because we feel like we're censored, right? Like I think faith-based situations always feel censored. I can't say that, or I shouldn't say that, or we do our best
Yeah.
to be politically correct. And I'm not saying you shouldn't try to be politically at times, but
Yes.
raw emotion, right, gives you that real. It's like people say when you drink, right, like you tell the truth. I want to tell the truth even when I'm not drinking and feel comfortable about it. So
Yeah.
right, like I think you're absolutely right.
Like, you're out here making
I agree
videos
with
and doing
some.
everything. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying, because the question, right, is how do we have um how do we get that voice um projected? How do we amplify, right? Pun intended, amplify network. How do we amplify that voice to the and let me say this. I actually even hate calling white males the majority, because
Mm-hmm.
in some ways they're no longer the majority in our
Right.
country in terms of population.
Yeah.
But we'll go with that terminology just for right now. But how do we mobilize and uplift those voices to that that pocket of people? How do we make sure that those voices are heard, that those experiences are felt, that truth is echoed? How do we do that? How do we be better prepared to do that?
Yeah. Because I mean, they're not the majority, but they are dominant culture.
Yeah,
They've amassed,
yeah, yeah,
they currently still have the most power.
yeah.
So I think we who are 20 plus Uh, I think our responsibility in the conversation is doing that, is amplifying what youth are doing, what our folks of color are doing, especially for those of us who are maybe socioeconomically in a more comfortable place and aren't in total survival mode, where you can't be worrying about an election because you're just like, how the crap do I get to tomorrow? Because I've been in that mode of like, how the crap do I get to tomorrow? And I'm not worried about an election. So if you're not in that
Mm-hmm.
place, then you can be in the
Mm-hmm.
how do I amplify and how do I get the message out there? How do I make sure more people are hearing this? That's I think where our responsibility
Yeah,
is
we
getting
gotta
that
tell
out.
stories. I think, you
Yeah.
know, when you talk about that, you look at the fact that young man Jamie Harrison is running against Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. One, the fact that he is doing as amazing as he is a testament to what we know about black and brown people. And it shouldn't. We've got to get past the thing where it's, wow, he's doing that, and we got to remove the shock and all like
Yes.
the first black man. You know, we got to get beyond those, and we have to tell these stories. We got to figure out. This is what I think our young people are teaching us through the power of social media is owning our own narratives. And there was also a very powerful moment, and you got to forgive me because I cannot remember the name behind it, but there was a very powerful movement where there was a collection of white women who were very prominent and positioned very well, who for an entire day turned over their Instagram handles
Yeah.
to prominent black women. And I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember the name of the
Mm-hmm.
movement, but a friend of mine, Danielle
Share
Young,
the
who works
mic.
for Essence, share the mic. Yes, that was
Yes, I
it.
remember
It
this.
was so it was so dope to watch because communities who did not know the brilliance that exists in black and
Mm-hmm.
brown communities got a chance to see all day long. But then the question is, why is it just a day? Why is we got to figure out ways to make it a part of the culture, a part of the norm where we're having those conversations, we're
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
empowering people to tell their story, so that we can get them to connect their story, even if it is that story of struggle. We get them to connect that story to the story of potential and possibility and how it all connects. Yes, you're struggling, but here's why we need you to engage, because your struggle equals power. Your awareness of who you are, even in the struggle, equals power. And
Mm-hmm.
that is why those currently in power don't want other people to tell those stories, because they
Yes.
are afraid that they will lose that grip. They will lose that power grip if people discover who they are enough where they can be emboldened to tell their own narrative and then move from narrative to action. They don't want that, because that
Mm-hmm.
that then means that they gotta let go of something. And so this fear that exists in that demographic, particularly of white men in power, is very real. It's very real, and it shows itself in Charlottesville, shows itself in every other place where power begins to rise up from those that are seemingly at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Angela, you were going to say something earlier. Do you still have that thought?
I have so many thoughts. Um,
Yeah.
so okay. So real quick, Anna Jelsey, you were talking about how do we kind of convince a group of people to care about other things, right? Or to engage more, even, a big voting bloc, white men, white women. And I think, this is not breaking news, but when the system works for you, you don't feel like you need to do anything or
Right.
engage much to change it. You just vote again.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's where strategy needs to come in, because the same way that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg won for sex discrimination, she had to show that sex discrimination also hurts men. That's the
Yep.
only reason it worked.
Mm,
It wasn't
mm,
ever about women. It was, oh, this affects us too.
Yep.
So the strategy there needs to get behind the curtain of whatever very strong grip is holding on for the evangelical right within the Republican Party. It is not, again, I don't think the Democrats have it right. I don't think the Republicans have it right. We're all broken people, right? But
Yeah.
the idea that Christian means one thing is false.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so trying to break those strongholds within people to vote based off of topic and issue rather than party alignment is where we'll see actual movement. So, but it doesn't come from just saying, here's the issue. It comes from like, this is how it's going to affect you, even though you don't realize it right now.
Yeah. You're speaking to the community organizer in me more. I love it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Oh, and one more thing, just on growing up. I view the way in which I see voting and just civic engagement the same way that I kind of see my faith as it evolved from being young and being raised in a very evangelical home. My faith had to become my own, and my ideas about the world had to become my own. I remember the first election that I was, when I turned 18, I just voted for who my parents voted for because I didn't know any better. And I was like, this is what we do. And I was like, no, this is not what I do. So, but I had to learn that on my own and realize that I don't have the same brain as my parents, and I evolve in different ways. But unless you take that ownership of your own life, you'll just continue down the same path, which has been laid out for you.
Yeah. You say some amazing points. And so here we are. We're having this conversation, right? There's a diverse group of us having this conversation. And Anna Joseph, I hear so much of what you're saying, right? Like there, and I love Angela what you said about being strategic. I think that is so important. I think every movement they need to have strategy. I think you cannot move if you do not have strategy. Part of that strategy for so long, Anna Joseph, you talked about the conversations that people have. Are these conversations, right? Are these places where people can talk and actually have open dialogue? Is it healthy to have conversations about politics? Because so often we see people bicker and banter and they come in with preconceived notions and thoughts and ideas. Is it healthy to have the conversation? And if so, how do we have those conversations?
So
I love that you took a breath.
Well, because I feel like you did a trick question, and you're not going to get me. So, no, I mean, communication is beautiful, and so communicating about any topic with the intention of wanting to learn something and understand one another and walk away having actually like glean something new, that of course that's a good endeavor, that's a good thing. You're furiously being up at 3 a.m. on your keyboard with red eyes on the Facebook or Reddit chat forum, discussing whether or not QAnon is telling the truth, maybe is not the best idea. So there's a spectrum. So I don't think it's my point being, it's not a cut and dry, like, yeah, it's great to talk about it. I think there's a reason we all were gifted with some degree of discernment, and we're supposed to practice that discernment. You don't throw seeds on cement. You don't put pearls before swine. There's conversation that is not meant to be had with certain people that you knew when you went into it wasn't going to get you anywhere. And there's some conversation where sometimes I have conversation where I know it's not going to get me anywhere with the individual, but I know there are folks listening and it's going to bless those people and it's going to help those people, and that's who I'm trying to reach. Sometimes I have conversation with people and I know I'm making the wrong choice because I'm speaking out of anger or frustration or pain or trauma. And sometimes I have conversations with people because I think that person right in front of me, they and I might actually get somewhere different or new or helpful. So every conversation has a different purpose. And sometimes it had no purpose at all and it probably wasn't supposed to happen. So I really don't think it's cut and dry.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney this week said that he was disappointed in the level of discourse that has taken place now in the halls of Congress, And I'm not so sure how much of that discourse he has contributed to in a less than positive manner himself. But it is. I mean, when you listen in, I listened in some of the dialogue and conversation this week around the nomination hearings for Judge Barrett. And, I think what is frustrating young people is that when they are introduced to the conversation, it is from a very partisan perspective. That it's yes, let's focus this, let's focus this, and young people are saying, yeah, no, it's about the issue for me.
Yeah.
It's the problem for me. It's the the fact that my family, we are as you all were saying earlier, we are in this struggle place, and so I think a part of this is we got to have, Angelisa, you were right. We got to have the right conversation. We
Mm.
got to have the right conversation with the right people. I think it's also important to have your circle where you can have the vent moment,
Yeah.
because there are definitely moments where I need to be able to speak. And I'm saying this with one of my oldest friends in the world, for less than 30 years. Here and take you back to the many conversations that we've had around complex issues. I think that's the other thing to reckon. These are complex issues that we are trying to figure out, and we've got to give each other grace. I think COVID has taught us that we've got to give each other grace, to be able to disagree agreeably. And it's cool if you don't agree with, the path, but I think we all agree and seek to find those people who agree that change needs to take place, even though we may differ on how we get to that change.
Hmm. Angela,
I
please.
think for me, one thing that's important is, as you both said, we're not going to change everyone that we talk to. And the thing is, as much as we are informed, we don't have all the answers either, right? So understanding grace for others and ourselves. But I think the most important thing for me, I've had some painful conversations during this season with family members, and um, it it's just, as long, for me, I might not be able to change someone's mind where I think, their heart needs to go, but as long as they know who I am fully, that's what matters most. Some disguise of, I believe what you believe. I'm to be bold enough to say, actually, no. I might not be able to convince you, but you're not going to convince me either.
Hmm.
You're going to fully know who I think that's important to show up for the people around us, just to be the example in which we are trying to, to lead others in.
I
Yeah.
do feel, and I want to pick my words really carefully, but I do feel an urgency or a sort of burden to say, at least for me, my ability or my ethics only allow conversation or argument or debate to go so far, or to cover so many things. Um, and so there are some things that, because I can feel myself I can actually feel warmth rising as I'm even saying this. Um, there's some things where you're just not going to come and stand in front of me and argue with me about. You're going to see the unsaved side of Anna Jealousy. uh, so the first example that's coming to mind is like, you're not going to come and tell me that there's any scenario where Black and brown women in a detainment center in Georgia can be forced to have their uterus cut out and not know what is happening to them, and that you can justify that and say,
Mm-hmm.
agree to disagree.
Right.
There's no situation.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Agreed.
And the thought of someone trying to tell me you're getting too emotional, or can you just, don't you know how to have a healthy discourse? No, no, I don't.
Yeah.
We're not
Hmm.
going
Controversial
to.
topic.
You
Yeah.
picked the wrong one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, there's just some things where, yeah, I have a line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
I,
The
I'm a,
fire is coming through the screen.
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
She takes off her
Jesse,
That's
jacket.
good.
pour this water on you right here and see if I
That's
can
good.
get.
That's good.
We all like, oh,
That's
let's
good.
take a. Yeah. We're gonna close. I want to take this moment and say this. If there's something that you believe is just at the top of what people should be thinking about, there are folks that are still. We know that most people, and yet, better yet, some folks are very unsure about who they vote for. A majority of people are very sure about who they're going to vote for, and then you've got in between. If you could affect the way that someone will vote and what they consider is they vote this season, what is it that you could say? What's that thing that you want to make sure is out there in the universe? Because I believe that I do believe there's power in words. I believe that this is a platform that even if there aren't like thousands of people watching tonight, our numbers tend to go up. Sometimes people skip and they go, okay, well, I want to hear a different. If you could get that in the universe, right? You would put that energy in the universe. What is that thing that you would want to touch someone's heart if it absolutely came down to you being able to influence someone to consider or think about something or just put it out there so that it has its space in the universe when as people consider what they're voting for?
I think for me, the of course I see everything through a church lens. Forgive me, but I think the same way that people choose a church. There's so many churches. Not every church is going to fit exactly what you want, right? There's no perfect church ever. And so you, as an individual, as a Christ follower, need to find the church that fits you the best, that fits what you believe Jesus is trying to teach us the best. And so figuring out, especially in this election, what your non-negotiables are, like flat out, this is it, this is my line, and then realizing that the other things we can work on. We have time. But what are those things that really stick in your heart that you will not move on? And don't budge.
Yeah.
I'll tag with Angela, and I agree 100%. It's gotta almost as it's gotta be that fire. Anna Justin, you got that fire started in us. It's got to be something that burns in you like that. I'll say Linda Sawsaw, who's one of the co-founders of Until Freedom. She's engaged with the Women's March movement. She said a couple months ago, pick the dog that you can fight and win with. And so I think the question becomes, as people are going to the poll to engage, where do you see an opportunity to engage in a fight that does have a win scenario? Um, and I think that in this case, there are some very clear answers to that. We will find ourselves struggling with whoever. I don't think, again, to Angela's point, there is no perfect party. There's no perfect individual running for any office, let alone just the presidency. It's going to require us, and there've been a whole lot of folks who are saying, well, no, let's go third party. Let's listen. 20 days out, 40 days out. That's not the
We
time
don't
to
have
have
time
that
for that.
conversation. Nope.
Please.
The time for that is after we've gotten through this election, and on November 4th, I need you to start planning your, engagement in the process. Not 20 days or 40 days out. Yes, I
Mm,
believe we need new leadership. We need new energy across the board. Every party, every level of government, every office needs new blood, new energy. But strategy, we said it earlier, like, and I'll just speak to the news today. Somebody needs to tell Ice Cube to go have a seat, because the brother's timing, the brothers. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. We at the well. We say what needs to be said. The brother's
that's right.
timing, while his motives might be somewhere in the vicinity of right, his timing is
So
horrible 20 days out is not the time to have that conversation because it's not going to be seen as anything more than a political move. And that's all it is. That's all it is. Let's have
Mm-hmm.
that conversation November 4th, or, according to some folks, a year from now when we get the elections, the ballots counted. Let's have that conversation
Yeah.
after the election. Let's have the conversation after the election, because then the other question is to Mr. Cube. I would ask him, well, if this is the case, the brother has had 4 years to make this case. Where has he been? So it's all about
Mm.
timing. It's all about timing and the fight that you can win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. That
I
was
would
perfect.
say, sorry, he got me
That's
stuck
it.
on ice cream. Could we also just not listen to celebrities? Because also, like, what is that? um, no, I would say, speaking of listening, these last 4 years and before that, with not getting fixated just on this administration, but to be frank, with this last 4 years in particular, we've had so many warning voices, prophetic voices, um, just like crying out, like just straight up wailing of what they saw coming, of what we were afraid of what I was afraid of, and some being really specific of this is what we're risking, this is what could happen, and we've seen more than we would like ever like want of that already come to fruition, and a lot of times our responses to those prophetic voices is you're so hyperbolic and you're so dramatic, and that is so unlike anything that could ever happen in the good old US of A. That's some other country's kind of problem, which is like we've got to get our like hoity-toity nose out of the air and acknowledge the direction we have been taking for years, particularly these last few years, and start listening to some of these voices that are saying, like, we have seen what this trajectory looks like in other countries. This is not a map that we don't have laid out for us. We know exactly what it looks like, and that's why we're able to
Mm.
point to it here. And we keep telling you when things are happening, what's going to come next, and you keep silencing us. I would say if we're going to start listening to some of those voices, because they keep telling us what is coming next. And frankly, I'm really scared for us. I'm scared for what this is going to mean for us either way.
Yeah. And Chelsea, how can people follow you? If are you willing to share that? How can people get in contact with you? You do some amazing training on things like this. How do people look you up? How do they find you?
Sure. You can go to my website. It is browneyedamazon.com. And then if you look up the same thing on Facebook, Brown Eyed Amazon, you'll easily find me. And same thing on Twitter and on Instagram. So yeah, come message me, connect. I'm all over the place.
Yeah. Minister LeVar, you're doing some amazing ministry where you are, and somebody wants to find you so you can come preach, teach, or enroll their children in your program. How can they find you? How do they get in contact with you?
So all across social media platforms, I am LeVar Jones. My mother would appreciate if you spelled my first name Levar. Resist the urge to make it Levar Jones. I am LeVar Jones across all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Let's connect. Let's engage. Let's have conversation. Let's make change.
Pastor Angela, if you'd like to share that as well, and then our super producer Jackie, who's back there, I know you have some pictures. I'm not sure if you're able to show them, but I want you also to talk about this amazing project that you've been working on, that you have coming out. Can you just share with people how they can follow you, and can you share with them what this amazing project is that you're working on?
Sure, that's such a nice surprise. Thank you. So I'm only on Instagram, so millennial, sorry. Apostle. That's it. And there's a lot of dog content on my Instagram, particularly one dog, like I said, my dog Rosie. And the project that Ramon was talking about is a children's book that I wrote about Rosie. It's called Rosie to the Rescue. Oh my goodness, there it is. Thank you. It's available for pre-order now. Comes out officially November 14th. I didn't, so I had the dream to write the book last year, and I didn't know what 2020 was going to have in store for us when I wrote it. But essentially, it is a story that highlights shelter dogs, also, of course, highlights pit bulls. But really, the entire concept of the book is reminding us what real superpowers are, and they're not the ones that we see on the movies. They're things that matter much deeper to individuals. And so it's the ability to connect with people and show how dogs can share those superpowers and, you know, give us the ability to see them all around us.
I will make sure that we at the Well, because the Well is you, we will place that on all of our social media handles. And if you could resend me, I think I have the link actually to where they can purchase the book. But just make sure to resend it to me, and I'll make sure that we post that and share that so people can get it. I think it's super dope. If you don't know Pastor Kay or Pastor Angela, she is in love with her dog, and she's always been a dog person. She just loves dogs. And
I will say
no
one
pun
other
intended.
thing. There, 20% of every sale goes to my favorite pit bull organization. It's called Stand Up for Pits. They're based in LA, and they're an incredible advocacy group. And so every sale will benefit them as well.
I need to get a
That's
copy.
super
I didn't know
awesome.
you could pre-order it.
Yes, so exciting.
Yeah.
I'll sign them all.
Yeah.
So will Rosie. I'll put a stamp for her.
Oh.
So
Thank you for
That's
congratulations.
letting
super
me share.
cool.
That was very kind.
Of course.
That's cool.
Listen, there are a couple of things coming up as well. We have a flyer for you. Union Memorial United Methodist Church has asked me to be one of the premier people on their concert on October 25th.
Oh.
I will post that up in all of our stuff as well. I'm super excited. I get to do the whole like BET Grammy Award type experience because I did a whole filming of a performance. So that's how we're doing it, versus a virtual performance. There is a cost to watch, but I know that it goes towards the programs that they have there at that church, and so I think it's super dope. I am super excited because it's my first virtual performance. So it was a joy doing it. A shout out to Straight Cut Productions, my boy Trey or Hezekiah, who did a lot of the shooting for me, and of course Phase and Recording Studios, who allowed me to do the sound there, which I work out a lot with. And then next, there's a flyer for next week where we're doing who would Jesus choose. And we have guests Kevin Southall and Jonathan Hudson. I had so much fun making that flyer. We're gonna have
Good.
In the corner.
yeah. I
Proud for all
love
of
it.
us.
I literally enjoy making that flyer. We're gonna have this conversation around was Jesus political? And again, like we kind of said in the beginning, who would Jesus sort of side with? Would Jesus be on that more conservative side? Would he be on the liberal side, or would he be somewhere in between? I have two guests that are very strong in their beliefs on who they follow, and I think there are a couple of surprises on the makeup of the folks and who they follow. So I think you should tune in just because it's going to be an amazing conversation. And my boy, Pastor Tay, is going to be one of the moderators with me. I decided I could not moderate that by myself. Somebody said earlier, as we have seen, solo moderators do not get the job done. And so I've learned from the heads of the country that we probably should have more than one moderator. Do me a favor, those of you all who join with us tonight, make sure you share this conversation and this dialogue on all your social media sites. You can follow us on Encounter the Well at Facebook and Encounter the Well on Instagram. Listen, it takes money to have programs like this. So if you want to partner with us, you can text to give any dollar amount to the number 84321. If you want to give us $1, that's amazing. If you want to give us $100, that's dope. If you want to give us $1,000, that's crazy spectacular. But please feel free to help us as we build this type of programming. And we want to just be real and authentic and bring real voices. Anna Josie, Minister LeVar, Pastor Angela, it has been an amazing night with you guys. I'm super excited that we got through this conversation. I'm looking forward to having you all back. I hope that you all will come back. I hope that everyone takes the time to vote either early. Thank you, Jackie, our super producer who's throwing the hints. Let's make sure we vote. Get out and vote. You have the power. The power is in your hands. And folks say all the time, I don't want to vote. There's LeVar, who and some of his kids, I don't know if you saw LeVar, but people say it all the time, I don't want to vote. I don't believe that I have a voice. Listen, you absolutely have a voice. Your voice matters. And Chelsea, tell Matt, who's a part of our squad, hi in that last picture. You and Matt is so adorable. Oh, yes. And John Paul, who you see there in that picture, had a hand in illustrating the book. That's why we made sure that we chose that picture. John Paul is an amazing singer, an amazing guy. Yeah, he is the illustrator. Wonderful. So a shout out to John Paul and all the folks who joined in tonight. Lauren and Mama Annie and all the other folks. Carolyn Sams, Dr. Mills, Ricky Payton, Lovely Tracy, all of the folks who joined in. We just appreciate you, and we will see you next week. I love you all, and there's nothing that anyone can do about that. Until we meet again, peace and love.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.
Together, we'll find the cure on the better, eradicate it forever. Oh, we need you, yes, we need you.